Welcome, detectives. My name is Jason Richards, Microsoft Technical Trainer and Data Detective. And let's face it, sometimes we just like to be lazy. Efficient. When solving data mysteries, we want to crack the case as quickly as possible, with as little deep investigation as possible. Same applies to analytics. Sometimes we just know the logic behind how we get the data and how we want it to look when we're done. And we don't want all the complexities of systems integrations and complex coding to do it. Pipelines to the rescue. Pipelines in Microsoft Fabric encapsulate a sequence of activities that perform data movement and processing tasks. You can use a pipeline to define data transfer and transformation activities and orchestrate these activities through control flow activities that manage things like branching, looping, and other typical processing logic. The graphical pipeline canvas in the Fabric user interface enables you to build complex pipelines with minimal or no coding required. Before building pipelines in Microsoft Fabric, you should understand a few core concepts. Activities are the executable tasks in a pipeline. You can define a flow of activities by connecting them in a sequence. The outcome of a particular activity, meaning success, failure, or completion, can be used to direct the flow to the next activity in the sequence. There are two broad categories of activities in a pipeline. Data transformation activities encapsulate data transfer operations, including simple copy data activities that extract data from a source and load it to a destination, and more complex data flow activities that encapsulate data flows that apply transformations to the data as it's transferred. Other data transformation activities include notebook activities to run Spark notebooks, stored procedure activities to run SQL code, and delete data activities to delete existing data, and others. Control flow activities allow you to implement loops, conditional branching, or manage variable and parameter values. The wide range of control flow activities enables you to implement complex pipeline logic to orchestrate data ingestion and transformation flows. Pipelines can be parameterized, enabling you to provide specific values to be used each time a pipeline's run. For example, you might want to use a pipeline to save ingested data in a folder, but have the flexibility to specify a folder name each time the pipeline is run. Using parameters increases the reusability of your pipelines, enabling you to create flexible data ingestion and transformation processes. Each time a pipeline is executed, a data pipeline run is initiated. Runs can be initiated on demand in the Fabric user interface or scheduled to start a specific frequency. Use the unique run ID to review run details to confirm they completed successfully and investigate the specific settings used for each execution. All right, so we cracked the case of what pipelines are and understand that we can create complex transformations using this Fabric item. We can also use them to do simple things like copying data. Time to investigate the copying conundrum. The copy data activity is one of the most commonly used data pipeline activities. Many pipelines consist of a single copy data activity that's used to ingest data from an external source into a lakehouse file or table. You can also combine the copy data activity with other activities to create a repeatable data ingestion process. For example, by using a delete data activity to remove existing data, a copy data activity to replace the deleted data with a file containing data from an external source, and a notebook activity to run Spark code that transforms the data in the file and then loads it into a table. When you add a copy data activity to a pipeline, a graphical tool takes you through the steps required to configure the data source and the data destination for the copy operation. A wide range of source connections is supported, making it possible to ingest data from the most common sources. After you've added a copy data activity to a pipeline, you can select it in the pipeline canvas and edit its settings in the pane underneath. Use the copy data activity when you need to copy data directly between supported source and destination without applying any transformations, or when you want to import the raw data and apply transformations in later pipeline activities. The simple things. But what about more complex transformations that don't fit into a single activity? That's where we can dial up our investigative specialist, data flows. If you need to apply specific transformations to the data as it's ingested that can't be done with a single activity, or you want to merge data from multiple sources, consider using a data flow activity to run a data flow. You can use the Power Query user interface to define a data flow that includes multiple transformation steps and included in the pipeline. You can define pipelines from any combination of activities you choose, enabling you to create custom data ingestion and transformation processes to meet your specific needs. However, there are many common pipeline scenarios for which Microsoft Fabric includes predefined pipeline templates that you can use and customize as required. To create a pipeline based on a template, select the Choose a Task to start a new pipeline as shown here. Selecting this option displays a selection of pipeline templates. You can then choose the most appropriate template for your needs, and then edit the pipeline in the pipeline canvas to customize it to your needs. Now we're ramping up to become pipeline pros. Imagine now we have a plethora of pipelines powering your processes. Say that 5 times fast. How do we make sure things will properly execute? And after we publish the pipelines, how do we monitor them? Great questions. Let's look at the clues. When you have a completed pipeline, you can use the Validate option to check that its configuration is valid, and then either run it interactively or specify a schedule. You can view the run history for a pipeline to see details of each run, either from the pipeline canvas or from the pipeline item listed on the page for the workspace. When you view a pipeline run history from the workspace page, you can select the run start value to see the details of an individual run. That includes the option to view the individual execution time for each activity as a Gantt chart. The Detectolab 5000 is powered up and ready to put this knowledge into practice. Let's dive in and start pipelining.
All right, back in the environment, and now we're going to talk about pipelines. So we are going to create a pipeline, very generic one, just a copy one, and load files into our lakehouse. So again, an ingestion method, just a different way of bringing data in. But obviously we want to see different options. So we're going to use a data pipeline. You can see that I'm in my workspace right now, and we're going to go ahead and create a new data pipeline. What are we going to call this pipeline? What do they want me to call it? So I'm going to copy and paste this. This is the actual name that we're going to call this, ingest data from source to lakehouse. And this should open up my pipeline experience. Right? So now you can see that I have new activities. I can create pipeline activities. I can use the copy data assistant. And that will take me through a step-by-step like wizard in order to do this. But I think I want to create just a copy data activity. We won't go through the step-by-step. That's more of a wizard, and feel free to go through and experiment on your own. If you want to create a wizard or something like that, that's perfectly fine. But we're going to go through the copy data activity itself and build this out ourselves. Because when we add a activity, now remember a pipeline could contain several activities in here, and we can chain activities together. Now, this particular pipeline will be a single step, but let's go ahead and back up and introduce the features and what you can do with this service or with this item within the Fabric experience. So you can see here that I have my main ribbon, which has my different activities that I can include in here, what I can do when I'm ready to run this, and I can view the JSON code. So if I want to programmatically save this and integrate it with like Git or something like that, that's great. I can do things like that, or zoom out the visual interface itself. And all this is just visual interface that allows me to zoom in, zoom out, do all that good stuff. If I wanted to add another activity, because I have an existing data flow, I can click data flow, I can add this activity, and then I can say on a success or on some certain state of this, I could do something and chain these together. You can also see that anytime I select something, I might have, there might be particular settings within each activity that are going to differ depending on what I'm connecting it to, right? So I have a data flow that I created in a separate one, so I could chain this together and connect it to a lake or this particular data flow. When I change those settings, I can even change the settings on the actual state itself, right? So when this is complete, so this is a state, kind of a state machine here that looks at what the output of or what the state was of the previous step. And this is one way I can do control flow, right? So if the pipeline happens to skip that step, I could take it through a whole different self-healing aspect of things. If it fails, then I might want to do something like send an email to somebody, which could be another activity I can create, or if it completes or whatever. I could also just add control flows. So like if conditions, I think there's for each conditions that I can also apply to these. And if I don't need the steps, I can just delete the steps, right? So I can delete them, deactivate them, do what I need to. Also, when I don't have anything selected, I can place variables or parameters or settings that apply to the entire pipeline, not necessarily an individual step, but I can also change the settings on individual steps. So here we have general settings, right? So I can say what the activity state is. I can deactivate these if I wanted to and give it a timeout. So I can give it, say this activity is running longer than a certain period of time, it'll time out, and then I can give it retry options as well. And then there's some more advanced things that I can do. Keep in mind these steps are going to be different for each type of activity. Now, where's the source? Well, I want to get this source from an online. Actually, I also want to change this name of this copy activity to data copy to Lakehouse. And we're going to copy some information to that. We're going to look at the source and we're going to connect to an external source. And I'm going to create a new one. So I haven't created this connection yet. There's actually some public storage accounts that are available from Azure that will allow me to connect to them and bring data in from them. So they're publicly available. I don't need special permissions in order to connect to this. So we're going to connect to a blob storage account, and I have the address here. So essentially I'm using an endpoint because that's how we connect to cloud-based objects is through an endpoint. So you can see I'm just connecting to a blob storage account that just happens to have public data associated with it, right? So I'm going to make this a new connection. I can change the connection name. I don't want this to be the whole name of this, right? I just want to simplify this. So I'll call the connection name WWI sample data. And what this is it's a worldwide importers bunch of tables from a worldwide importers data set, right? Don't need a data gateway to connect to it because it's a public account, cloud-based. And then we're also accessing through anonymous access. This you can only do, again, with a publicly available storage account. There may be different options that you need to consider when you're connecting to a storage account or some other object that's going to require authentication credentials in order for you to connect to those. But we're going to go ahead and connect to this, right? So now you can see that what happened is that after we've created that connection, it added that connection. So now I have this connection permanently associated with my workspace, and I can go back and use this over and over again if I wanted to change it. It looked like it added that admin. It looked like it didn't delete a term that was supposed to not be in there, but it looks like it is. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go into the sample data path, and then, you know, I could go with wide world importers. In fact, it's wide world importers DW/Parquet. So I'm going to be loading in Parquet files. And then I'm going to load in all the files within that, right? I could also find this in the browse section. So it should go ahead and look at all what I'm doing in here. So it's going to have the incremental, and all the tables that are associated with this. But I could have went back into the root folder and applied this by using the browse option as well. All right, recursive checked, file format binary, and then what we want to do is change the destination. Where's this going? This is going to go into our lakehouse, right? So I want to make sure that it's a workspace associated item into a lakehouse. I have my sample lakehouse here, and then my root folder, I'm actually going to put this in my files, right? I'm associating this with files. And I'm going to rename this directory WWI raw data, right? And make it binary data. Boom, boom, boom. We're all good there. And then if I wanted some other settings, I could change those as well. All right. So I'm going to save this. Okay. Select run to execute the pipeline and get its activity running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run this pipeline. So this should copy the data automatically. Now I could have validated this, and you can also see that right now it's queued this up and it's going to actually execute this pipeline for me. Let's talk about some of these other options that are up here while this is actually running, because it's going to load a lot of tables in here. So what we have here is, let's see, under our run, I could validate. And what validating does is it actually checks for any errors that might happen in a pipeline that we've created. So if I have several steps in here, I can validate all the steps to make sure that they're running. This actually succeeded, so that ran fairly quickly. I can also run these pipelines on a schedule. So I can create a schedule if I wanted to run this you know, a daily and apply certain times. I can add times to this. So several times during a day, several times during the week, by the hour, by the minute. So this automates this process for me. I don't have to refresh the data on my own. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to save this and run it on a schedule. But just wanted to show you that, yes, it did run this. I can monitor. Once I run the activity, I can monitor the activity here. Once it's gone in here, I can see how long it took, some other advanced options. You know, and it could say it, and these are all outputs. So this is all log information that's collectible and things that I can analyze later on. So you can see that the copy, it took it from the source, sent it to the destination, look at about, you know, almost a gig's worth of data that read in there with 106 different files in there. I think it did a pretty good job of loading that data in as fast as it did. But here I can see, you know, what happened with this actual process. If there are any errors, it would generate an error message for me. I can go in and see what happened with it. I can also see input settings and output settings in JSON format and be able to work with those as well. So now when I go back in my lake house, let's go back in here. And I go back into my lake house. Under the files, I should have all these files in here. So here it is, my WWI raw data. So now I have my, full incremental or my full backup, my incremental, and then, so this has all the folders worth of data that are in here, my fact sales. And from here, I could create tables out of these files. I can go into one of these and show you, just to show you that these got saved in Parquet files, right? So it partitioned the file itself. I don't think I can preview Parquet file information, but you could see that it partitioned the data out for me. Same thing with some of my dimension tables, right? So it partitioned out all this data for me, and that's typically what happens when we're dealing with Parquet file types. So there you have it. That's how we can use pipelines. And I know that was a very simple way of getting data from one way to another one, but you can build complex pipelines. Again, you can add several different sources, merge those sources together in single activities, and utilize pipelines to ingest data. Schedule these pipelines to run, load them into your lakehouse. Back to the studio.
Wow, we've learned a lot about pipelines in Microsoft Fabric. You now know the basic elements of pipelines and how to use the copy data tool and the data flow activity to ingest and transform data from various sources, how to leverage pipeline templates, and how to run and monitor your pipelines using the Fabric user interface. You're well on your way to becoming a data detective yourself, solving analytics mysteries with ease and efficiency. Just don't forget to clean up the crime scene after you're done. Thanks for joining.